this is obviously huge for Republicans and really for anyone who is concerned about border security. But when you look at catch and release, you have to look at what's causing it. And it's a judicial backlog, right, of people who are coming and they are applying for, excuse me, I let you speak, who are coming and looking for protection. Yeah. There's not enough room for everyone, so you have them being released. But the law that you said you don't need, the Senate deal, had it passed and become law, would have prevented that. It would have actually upped that credible. It would have upped that credible fear threshold. It would have upped that credible fear.
No, it actually wouldn't have. Yeah. It would have allowed 5,000 people in our country a day.
No, that's not true. That's not true. And the Border Patrol Council,
as was coming through.
Ma'am, may I please speak, or I'm going to have to cut this. If you won't let me speak, I'm going to cut the interview off, and I will let you speak and finish sentences.
I would
and please give me that respect as well.
Thank you very much.
So what I will say is the Border Patrol Council disagrees with you. They've been very frustrated with what you are representing as 5,000 people. That is actually a trigger, right? Which is actually, we're above it right now on the border. So it's not as you represent it.
That was CNN host Briana Keiler absolutely tearing apart the nonsense of MAGA Representative Beth Van Dyne. I have more to show you, but finally a good confrontation. Love to see it. Two things have to happen to create moments like that one. The first is that MAGA Republicans have to be willing to go on networks other than the right-wing ones that will only conduct softball interviews. And the second is that when they do go on those more mainstream, reasonable networks, the hosts have to be prepared to call out the nonsense. And often that's not something they're willing to do either. We'll also get to, by the way, in this segment, Fox News host Steve Doocy exposing the dishonesty of an argument being made by MAGA Republicans on a different subject. But first, lots of credit there to Briana Keiler. So many of the narratives that MAGA's entire ideology is built on are just so painfully, factually incorrect. Keiler points out that this lie Republicans are pushing, that Biden is just casually not processing migrants and having them enter the United States, is based on this profoundly dishonest presentation of the situation. Again, a lie. Right now, outside of Biden's control, there happens to be a big surge in migration at the southern border for a multitude of complex reasons. What's in his control, obviously, is how he responds. So in response, authorities and our immigration system more broadly are trying to manage the situation. And right now, there just aren't enough resources or proper systems in place to manage that as effectively as we should. Thus, Biden, Senate Democrats, and some Senate Republicans put together that border bill that sought to address this very subject. But Trump, as we covered extensively, wants to run on the border. So he wants the issues to be as bad as possible. So he directed MAGA to kill the deal, and they did. And by the way, just as a factual matter, it just so happens that you are more likely to be released as a migrant under the Trump administration than the Biden administration. We looked at the data on that in a past segment. I know it's crazy because it's supposed to be open border Joe, right? Not so much. And then this talking point about 5,000 people being allowed in with just no process is ridiculous. As Briana Keiler pointed out, that's the trigger for when even processing or hearing asylum claims starts being restricted in the new deal that was proposed that didn't get through because of MAGA. When that many people are encountered at the border, then there's this trigger. But it's not what she was portraying it to be, the MAGA Republican Congresswoman. Then here's another moment from this interview.
And we had a fantastic partnership with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, where we actually worked with them to remove criminal illegal immigrants in our communities because we saw the amount of crime that was being caused. We saw the people that they were preying upon was other people that were in our country illegally. As a result of that partnership, our crime rate dropped and we became the 5th safest city in the country. Those partnerships work. Enforcing our laws work. What we have seen is the exact opposite under this administration, and you have seen people dying.
Let me stop and ask you about this. A couple things. First off, illegal immigrants' criminal conviction rate is 45% below that of native-born Americans in your state, just to be clear. When you raise the specter of they create so many crimes, they're convicted. I mean, when it comes to violent crimes, property crimes, homicides, sex crimes, you talked in the past about rapes, The numbers just don't support that.
It is really interesting. I've said many times before, of course, people should only come to the United States legally, and we should have a secure border, and we should make our ability to process legal immigrants more robust and all of that. But just as a matter of fact, undocumented immigrants commit the least crime when comparing them to legal immigrants and then citizens born in the United States, which intuitively makes sense given that if you get caught for committing a crime and you're an undocumented immigrant, then you can be deported. So you'll be extra careful. But then moving on from that, let me first read this reporting to you, and then we'll hear from Steve Doocy. The Daily Beast reports, the Senate passed a $95 billion foreign aid package for Israel and Ukraine before sunrise Tuesday, with the bill now heading to the GOP-controlled House, where Speaker Mike Johnson indicated the measure may never see the light of day. Now, there's, of course, a whole separate conversation and debate going on about aid to Israel that involves Democrats amid the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, something Biden's been speaking about recently, and many others. But Republicans are opposed to this primarily because of aid to Ukraine. That's their sticking point. And the reasoning from some of them as to why we can't send aid to Ukraine is because we should secure our own border before funding the protection of Ukraine. That's the argument they make. We can't send money to Ukraine to defend their borders if our border's not secure. But you killed the border bill. They killed the deal on the border and are now saying action on the border is necessary to support Ukraine. It's crazy. Here's Doocy calling this out.
Speaker Johnson said he was slamming this package for excluding the border security provisions. The Senate bill, he said, is silent on the most pressing issue facing our country, talking about the border. He says he's not going to bring it to the floor if it passes the Senate, which it did, but they could find a way to go around the Speaker.
Right. And he says the reason that the House is not going to bring it up is because it needs border security stuff, which ironically was in the Senate bill last week. But of course, that was kicked to the curb because a bunch of Republicans bailed on it because Donald Trump didn't like it. According to Punchbowl this morning, House leadership believes that they cannot bring this particular Senate bill to the House floor if Johnson wants to remain Speaker. In other words, if they bring it up in the House, he will be gone.
Okay, so Doocy quickly and casually explained what is a deeply illogical argument from Mike Johnson. And I think we're going to be hearing this on a bunch of stuff in the future. From now on, anytime Republicans don't want to take something up in the House, they can just say, we refuse to engage with this because it doesn't address the situation at the southern border. But also, we're the ones who are preventing anything from being done on the border. MAGA math, I guess you could say. My goodness. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. You can become a member at lukebeasleyshow.com/membership.